Alright guys, so this is my list for 2023, my favorite books. One thing I want to mention first, if you are interested in supporting the channel, I do have a Patreon page. Some of the tiers are Old Man Willow and Ent. Old Man Willow is a big shout out to Paul and Powell. Thank you for being my patrons. And, at the highest level, you guys can support the channel and you get to pick a book for me. You get the, monthly Discord chats. And it's just a lot of fun. You also get some merch too. So, thanks again for all the support. And if you're interested in supporting, there is a Patreon link below. But let's kind of get into my favorite books of 2022. So, wow, 2022 was a heck of a year. I read about 71 books in 2022. Not where I wanted to be. Like, I set a goal of 40 books on Goodreads, but that was kind of like, I knew I was going to easily hit that. And I really set such a low goal because I had so much going on, like, with my master's and all this other stuff I was doing, like moving and, starting a new job and all that stuff. So I really just wanted to, have a lower kind of expectations, but I ended up, reading 71 books. I'm going to set a higher goal for 2023. I have plans of really what I want to read in 2023, so I'm super excited to kind of share that list with you later. But now we're talking about my favorite books of 2022. So I will be coming out in the new year, like with my full tier list of all the books I read in 2022 and ranking them on my tier list that you guys have seen before in those previous videos. But I've got my 10 favorite books, and I really kind of didn't want to do this like a lot of other booktubers do, where like, I'm just limiting to one author of like a certain, like, one author, one book from one author, and, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you my full top 10. Like, there's definitely duplicate authors on here because, these are my favorite authors. I love to read them, and all these books hit for me this year. And, looking at my list, there's probably, like maybe 6 different authors on here, and out of 10 books, so it's not a very complex list. You guys can probably know straight away if you've watched the channel for a while what books are going to be my favorite, and it's maybe just kind of figuring out what order. I think there's one that might be a surprise on here, or two, but these are my 10 favorite books of 2023. I think I will come in with some honorable mentions later. These books that I really enjoyed, or like books or series that I really enjoyed that maybe wouldn't hit the top 10, but are definitely in like that top 15 range. So I'll talk about those in a little bit. Let's get to number 10. All right, so number 10. This series is probably it's my favorite sci-fi series of all time. But this author is just, I've read all of his books this year except for one. It's a novella I haven't read, and I'm kind of saving that for 2023. Just because we're not going to get any of these books in 2023, so I got to have some kind of fix. So book 10, my 10th favorite book of the year is Ashes of Man by Christopher Rocchio. When I first read this book, I was mixed on it. And I think I just really needed to sit down and think about it because so much happened in this book. And this book is an interesting book because it was split between Kingdoms of Death and Ashes of Man. It was one book split into two, and I really think the split helped this book. And I felt that Ashes of Man was the better book than Kingdoms of Death. I loved Kingdoms of Death, but Ashes of Man was just such a fantastic book. And it had so many deep moments, had a lot of politics in the books, which I love. I love politics in books. And Hadrian Marlowe is such a complex character, also a tragic character. And at this stage in Ashes of Man, he's an older character. And I just love the journey he's on. I love where he's going to be at by the end of this book. He's a bit tortured. But you really start to see, where Christopher Rocchio is going to build the Sun Eater. You're seeing this next step where Hadrian Marlowe becomes the Sun Eater, right? And I just really love frame narratives. Some of my favorite books are frame narratives. And it's actually some of my least favorite right now, like with Assassin's Quest, as you guys saw in my last video, with my my least favorite books of the year. But number 10 is Ashes of Man by Christopher Rocchio. All right, so moving on to number 9. This is no surprise that this author's on here. He's going to be on here a few more times. And this is a Discworld book, and it's Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents. I love this book. It was so much fun. With Amazing Maurice, it's actually a YA novel, and it's considered YA. I don't love YA all the time. A lot of my least favorite books are YA right now. And this one is just great. It's such a simple story. It's so kind of cozy and, kind of just, it hits at your heartstrings, and it has a lot of deep messages, like all kind of Discworld books. But I found this one to be so enjoyable, and I don't necessarily love talking animals all the time in my books, and this one was just it had everything that for me to not like the book, and I ended up loving it. I think that's maybe why I liked it so much, is I kind of went in like, oh, I don't like talking animals in books, and I don't really love YA books. And I think maybe my expectations were low, and I just ended up hitting so hard for me. So I really loved it. The deeper meanings in this book are great. And I think if you have young children, or, you know, kids who are like, you know, that age group, like 10 to 12, this book would be, you know, they'd really enjoy it. And there's also an Amazing Maurice movie coming out I guess it's already come out in December for like people in the UK, and I think it's for North America. It's going to be coming out in January, so I'm looking forward to reading that. So number 9, Amazing Maurice. Number 8, I think this is the surprise one for a few people that it surprised me that I loved it so much, and that was Salem's Lot by Stephen King. This is such a simple story, really, where it's just a guy kind of coming back to his hometown to write a book, and he ends up, you know, stumbling on like a nest of vampires. And it's just something about Stephen King's writing, like writing in this era, like this 1950s, like 60s, like era, or 50s, 60s. I'm not really sure of the dates, but there's something so compelling about this story where I was just hooked. Like I wanted to learn so much more about these characters and their lives, and you know, it's a real like slice of life kind of horror book, essentially, when you're learning about their time in Salem's Lot. I think the ending is a little bit weaker on this book. It kind of ends with a whimper, but just the ending's not important, I don't think, for this story. It's just really about the journey that you're going on, and just how beautifully Stephen King writes. And it's one of his first, like, I think it's the second book he ever wrote. I really enjoyed it. It was so good. So Salem's Lot, number 8. All right, splashing back onto lists with number 7 is Terry Pratchett, and that is The Fifth Elephant, a Guards book. This is a great book, guys. It's amazing with the Guard series how just every book is fantastic. Even ones that are considered weaker, like Jingo, is still good. But this one, Fifth Elephant, you know, the Guards are going to Clatch, and they're dealing with werewolves, they're dealing with dwarves and dynastic succession, and it's good. Like there's just so many kind of, again, themes that he touches on with, you know, these fantasy races of dwarves and like golems and like werewolves that. You know, he's talking about, he touches on such big themes in this book of like sexuality, of like what it means to be a leader, and sacrifice too. This book's awesome. This book's so good. I think it's so underrated. It's probably one of the most underrated Discworld books, I think. And The Fifth Elephant was such a slam dunk for me. And I can see when I reread that book, it's just gonna hit like so hard. It's so good. I cannot wait to read more Discworld, and especially read like Thud, because everyone says Thud is like the best Discworld book. So yeah, I loved it. Fifth Elephant, that's why it's number 7. All right, so number 6, and it's actually another Pratchett, another Discworld book, and this is gonna be the last one. So for anyone who's not a Discworld fan, you don't have to worry. But it's Night Watch. Wow, this book, Night Watch, it's unreal. You know, this is it's kind of like Back to the Future meets like Les Mis. It's really good. And if that doesn't sell you, then I don't think you'll like this book. But it's actually a much darker Discworld book. It's really kind of introspective, and it's actually very emotional, and you know, it deals with very dark themes, and very you know, just Pratchett really hits home with this book, and it puts you in a very different emotional state for a Discworld book, one that you're not used to really being put in. And I really enjoyed it. It's such a deep book, and you're going into the past of the disc, and you're seeing what the Discworld, or what Ankh-Morpork looked like, you know, 30 years ago, and it's a different place, and it's kind of great to see how different Ankh-Morpork is, and you know, these characters of Vimes and Vetinari, how they've changed it so much. It's amazing. It's honestly, this is such an amazing novel, and like I said, if you like deep dark themes, and if you like just a very emotional raw story, Night Watch. And I think with the expectations, like, people don't expect this out of a Discworld novel, and they should, but It's so good. This is definitely like, these are all S tier books that are on this list, and this book is an absolute S tier. So, Night Watched by Terry Pratchett. All right, so top 5, my 5, we're at there. We're getting through the list, guys. The number 5, my 5th favorite book is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This book, I read this quite early in the year, and I listened to it on audiobook, and it's just stuck with me since. Like, you know, just it's I guess another YA book, a coming of age story with, I think the boy's name is Bob Evans or Bob Owens. I can't remember. I always get it wrong. But or not Bob, it's Bob. I've totally got it wrong. It's like Bod Owens or Bod Evans. Either way, it's just such a beautiful coming of age story of this boy whose parents are murdered, and you know, he's now being raised by the ghosts in the graveyard. And then there's also that kind of story of him trying to find out the murder of his parents, and you know, kind of find where he belongs in the world. And but it's broken down into 5 different stories of this boy's life, from when he is a young child to when he's almost an adult. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. One of those stories that definitely hits you in the heartstrings. I think it almost made me cry, and I usually never cry. I never get super emotional in any of the novels I read. And it's so good. It's such an emotional story. And I think, you know, being a parent and reading it maybe made it more emotionally impactful. Like, I think if I read it when I was, maybe if I was read it when you read it when you're younger, because it is a kind of a YA book, you would connect with it. But I think if you read this like where you don't have a family, and you're not like still a teenager or a young child yourself, you just might not connect with it. But for me, I really connected with it. Really enjoyed this storytelling, and I loved every kind of like little short story that was kind of put together in this book, The Graveyard Book. So absolutely fantastic. My 5th favorite book of the year. Number 4, getting back to Mr. Rockio. This book it's such a fantastic book. This is probably one of the best sequels ever written. Such an amazing follow-up to Empire of Silence, and that is Howling Dark. Also one of the best covers. It's my favorite cover of all time, Howling Dark. It's just so fantastic. Artwork by Kieran Yanner. But this book, yeah, it's really different to Empire of Silence. You know, Hadrian's at a very different point in his life. He's dealing with, the failures of not being able to kind of achieve his dream of unite humanity with the Cielson and find this peace. And, you really start to see this growth of Hadrian, of realizing that, maybe this isn't going to be possible. Like, this may never be possible. And there's so many things. Like, the thing with this book, too, which is so fascinating, there's some real dark stuff that happens. And some stuff that you don't, you don't see coming. And when people say, oh, it's a frame narrative, the character survives the end, blah, blah, blah. Like, did you see some of the stuff that was going to happen? Like, or did you think in your mind that some of the stuff that was going to happen in Howling Dark? No, shut up. Like, there's no way you did. Like, there's no way you saw that coming. So, Christopher Rockio, just an absolutely fantastic author. This one, you can really see his growth from Empire of Silence to Howling Dark. He really holds no punches back. You meet some of the best characters in Howling Dark. And the ending of this book, like, this is one of those books, like, it was like 11 o'clock when I was at like maybe 85% through the book, and then something happened. I was like, I'm not going to bed till this is finished now. And I remember putting the book down at like 1:30 in the morning, like, holy cow, what an adventure. So, Howling Dark, number 4. I read all the Sun Eater this year, and it's just been one of the best reading experiences of my life. So, Howling Dark, number 4. Number 3, the top 3, my 3rd favorite book of the year. And I ended up actually interviewing this author. I really just enjoyed my time with it. I wish him all the success, because I know he's going to be, I think he's writing the 2nd book, or it's like a 2nd book of a connected series. And that is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. It's just a very simple slice of life book where, an female orc barbarian is giving up the barbarian life, and she's opening a coffee and sweet shop. And, it doesn't sound like it's a super interesting premise, but it really is just, high fantasy with low stakes. Like, there's nothing super serious going on. There's no crazy, catastrophic events happening. It's just this character, Viv, trying to open a coffee shop. And there's kind of like this level progression where, the menu changes and certain things get added. And it's very cozy. It's very homey. Every person I've recommended this book to have enjoyed it and loved it. And I think if you just go into it with simple expectations and just you're there for an enjoyable ride, this is the book for you. You're gonna love it. Like, you know, it's one of those books. It's a great book to read right now in the winter, where you can cozy up on the couch with a hot cup of coffee and like a baked good, and then just enjoy your time with it and just don't take it very seriously. And I think this is where this book hits the hardest. And I think it's also reading this book at the right time. I read it at a great time last year. And, you know, because the thing with this book is I saw it all over the internet. It was all over Twitter, Legends and Lattes. I'm like, oh, the cover looks cool, but don't know anything about it. And I picked it up on a whim, and it was just so good. So, yeah, my third favorite book is Legends and Lattes. All right, so before we get to books 1 and 2, I'm going to do some honorable mentions. So these are the books that I loved, but they just didn't kind of break into that top 10, but are still very good. Top probably 15. First one is actually a book I read in January, and that was Gardens of the Moon, Malazan, book 1. I'm continuing with Malazan in 2023. So this is just a great book, great first entry. It does kind of throw you into the deep end. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of magic, and a lot of characters and names going on, but I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was so good. Like, you meet one of the coolest characters I've ever met in fantasy, which is like Animander Rake. So very good. Really like Gardens of the Moon. Next was, I'm just going to kind of put this whole series together, is the Of Blood and Bone series by John Gwynne. Started out a little weak with Time of Dread, but by the time when I got to Time of Courage, I really enjoyed the series, and I think it ended on such a high note. And yeah, Time of Courage, or Of Blood and Bone, great series. Highly recommend it. Just John Gwynne at some of his best. Next is Dresden, Grave Peril. I really liked Grave Peril. I really enjoyed the side characters you meet, like Michael. Just a good story, Grave Peril. So much fun. Love Dresden. Obviously, you know, you have to like Harry Dresden, kind of continue with the series. Some people really do not like Harry Dresden, and I really did. So I've read Summer Night. I'm going to be reading more Dresden in 2023. The last one is Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. Such an amazing sequel follow-up to Shadow of the Gods. Just, you know, John Gwynne he's that A-lister, like, you know, author where, you know, he's maybe not your favorite, but for some he's definitely your favorite. I know so many people love Faithful and Fallen, but he's always just so solid. He's going to come out fighting in every book, and he's going to knock it out of the park. So I cannot wait for the final book in this series. I still have bets on that. It's probably going to be called The Blood of the Gods. That's my bet. But yeah, Hunger of the Gods, fantastic book. So let's get to my top 2 favorite books of the year. For number 2, I'm going to cheat. This is a big cheat. And I think the reason was because all 3 of these books are so amazing and they're so solid, but they're all kind of one book because the timeline just literally just rolls right over into the next book. And this is probably the best trilogy I have ever read. It's some of the best writing I've ever read, and it's a historical fiction, and that is The Warlord Chronicle by Bernard Cornwell. If I had to pick one of the 3 of, you know, Winter King, Excalibur, and Enemy of God, just, you know, to pick one favorite one for this list, it would probably be Enemy of God. But like, they're so close. They're all so close. They're all so good. They're so different. And you're just with Durfel at a different time in his life. It's hard to kind of sum up all these books, you know, this trilogy in a few minutes here, really. But the big thing is, you know, it's this telling of Arthur, the story of Arthur through the eyes of Durfel, and it's a frame narrative again where Durfel's recounting his life. He's an older man at this stage, but he just goes through so much. Durfel is such a fascinating character himself. It's not really just the focus is on Arthur. You really invested in the character of Durfel, and it's so beautifully written, and it's such a lush world that Bernard Cornwell has created, and it's hands down the best trilogy I've ever read. I cannot think of a trilogy that is better that I've read. I mean, I'm probably blanking on a trilogy, but like this one it's sickening how solid this series is. Like, it's like he didn't miss a beat. You hate the characters you're supposed to hate, but then he throws in some redemption arcs that you just didn't think that he'd be able to change your mind on. And everything's just really so satisfying, but so sad. And oh my god, this series, this is going to stay with me as one of the best series I've ever read. The Winter King, the Warlord Chronicles. So beautiful, so heartbreaking, so emotional. One of the things too I love is just the magic. Like, you don't even know, I still don't know after reading the series, like, is it really magic or is it just like trickery, or, you know, you never really know. And it's just, this series just is, read it. It's so good. Just read it. Number 1, my favorite book of 2022 is The Demon in White by Christopher Rocchio. This is a huge book, and every part of this book is amazing. It's like literally from cover to cover. It is action-packed. It is just, you know, just high point after high point. Like, it's one of those books where, like, you know, usually books have that climax and then that falling action, but like this book, like, it's just like it just keeps skyrocketing, and there was never a part where I felt bored. And like, it's hard to, like, you know, like such a massive book, you say, oh, this part was kind of boring. There's like 100 pages that was boring. It's like, this book never gets boring. There's so much that's going on. There's like combat that's crazy. There is politics that are just, you're kind of on the edge of your seat with. You know, Hadrian's traveling to all these fantastic worlds, and he meets these other interesting characters, and he's so much happens in this book. And you know, it's funny, like, because I've talked with Christopher now, I've interviewed Christopher a few times, and he thinks this is, like, you know, the book where he thought it was his weakest, because, you know, he said, you know, he had a really good picture of how the story starts and how the story ends, but it's that middle part that's a little foggy. But holy cow, this is the foggy part of the series. Man alive. Unreal. Like, it's so good. Like, I had so many parts in this book where I wanted to, like, stand up and shout and be like, yes! And there's so many parts where I'm like, oh man, this is so hard and emotional. But Christopher Rocchio is just such a beautiful writer. One of my favorite authors of all time. Favorite living author of all time. You know, sadly, my favorite authors like Terry Pratchett and Robert Jordan are no longer with us. But this book, guys, Demon in White, is so emotional. It has, you know, some of the highest and lowest emotions in the series, I think. Definitely some tearjerker moments too. But Sun Eater is one of the best series out there, guys. If you're a sci-fi fan, or even if you're a fantasy fan, like, this series is you're gonna connect with it in a certain way. So, you know what? So that, guys, is my top 10 list of 2022. Some amazing books in here. I know a lot of similar authors with Rocchio and Pratchett, but you know what? These guys are my favorite authors for a reason. But I would love to know, what were your 3 favorite books of 2022? Just let me know. Like, comment down below. Tell me what were your favorite books. I'd love to discuss those with you. And guys, if you want to discuss any of these books with me, hit me up in the Discord. There is a link to the Discord below. And, you know, thank you guys so much for watching. All your support this year has meant so much to me. I cannot wait for 2023. And so we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.